Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and a warm welcome to everybody joining us today for this Atempo Data Protection for Microsoft 365 webinar. Very happy to have you on board today, and there are quite a few of you already joining the meeting. So I'll just kick off very quickly with a brief introduction to the speakers. It's true that one of the reasons we thought that 365 would be an interesting subject is the fact that obviously we talk a lot about explosions in IT, exploding data, exploding cloud usage, exploding cyber attacks, and so on. But there's one thing that's perhaps sometimes missed, and that's the explosion of the collaborative tool platforms in a SaaS environment, and that includes obviously Microsoft 365. So just to give you one example of that, the fact that back in 2020, Microsoft 365 teams had just 75 million frequent users, active users, and just 2 years later, we're up to 260 million. So that's a nearly threefold increase in the number of people using Teams and other, obviously, M365 tools. Obviously, the COVID pandemic is one of the main reasons for that, but what we've seen is an evolution or a revolution almost in how we're working and how we're managing and sharing our data, and obviously working in different areas and so on, and how that's really changed things for professional environments. So the question that we're going to be asking today, or two experts will be asking in any case, is how do we protect the emails, the files, the objects that we create on 365? Are the 365 tools sufficient to handle that? Do we need to think about having another type of tool? If so, which one? So without further ado, let me introduce the two speakers today who will be taking a look at these questions and going over the challenges and the risks and the solutions, of course. And these two experts are Geoffrey Bittard and Renaud Bonnevie. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for joining us today, obviously from Paris, so it's just early afternoon in Paris. And Geoffrey is the product marketing manager, as you can see here, and Renaud is technical product manager with a specific responsibility for our data protection tools, notably Tina, for those of you who know Atempo. So what's going to happen? We'll have Geoffrey will do a 15-20 minute presentation looking at the risks, the challenges, and introducing some of the Atempo solutions. And then Renaud will take over and give us a demonstration. It's always good to see the tool in use. And at the end, there will be a Q&A session for you. If you do have any questions, please use, if possible, the question tab at the bottom right of your screen. If you click on the question mark, you'll be able to ask us your questions, and we can answer them online at the end of the session or by email following the session if we don't have time. So that's it. I'll hand over to Geoffrey. Thanks very much again for tuning in, and enjoy the session.
Thank you, Nick, for this introduction. So I would like to start this presentation by giving you the latest Microsoft figures and key figures on the M365 services and cloud services from Microsoft. So as Nick previously said, today it's more than 250 million monthly users that are using Teams. We remember that only in 2020 it was only 70 million, so it's a huge and massive explosion of Team usages. In the world, it's more than 300 million endpoints which are using M365, and every day Microsoft we create 38 billion minutes with the Microsoft services such as Teams, such as Exchange. So every day 38 billion minutes are created. all over the world. So this is really those figures are really impressive, and also the cloud services figures. If we compare Q1 2021 with Q1 2022, we can see that M365 has growth by 20%. The Microsoft Cloud Services has increased by 32%, and also the M365 users between Q1 2021 and Q1 2022. These numbers has increased by 16%. So there is a massive adoption of the Microsoft services due to the pandemic, to the new way to work from home also. So people and company needs to adapt to new way to work. But however, people often think that once my data are in the cloud, there are no risk. But this is actually wrong, because even if your data is stored into Microsoft servers, you still have the physical risk, like fire. And we have seen last year some incident with cloud provider, and some company has lost their data because of a fire incident in some data centers. But also the cyber risk is still there, and specifically the ransomware attacks. Every day we can see more and more attacks, and it's not even the big companies which are targeted now. It's also smaller organization like hospital, like lawyer cabinet. We can see more and more attacks, and the email is specifically targeted and could be a vector of infection. So it's really important to know that even my data is stored in Microsoft servers, I have still a cyber risk. IT risks, then, okay, it's servers are still machines, so we can have some system failure or offline outage, disrupt services. So if this can happen also. Last risk, and the main one actually, and still the main risk, is the human risk, accidental deletion or even malicious. But really, it's people sometimes they think that even if they delete one email, well, it's not a big deal, because it's still there in the trash bin. But as we can see now, this is wrong also. In Microsoft standard retention policy, you can see on the screen that for OneDrive or SharePoint, the maximum retention is 93 days. For Exchange, so the email, it's between 14 and 30 days maximum. And for Teams, it's only from 1 to 7 days. So what does that mean? It means that once the retention is over, then your file will be completely deleted, and it won't be possible to get it back. So again, it's you need to extend those retention if you want to keep your data for legal or compliance issues also. For some vertical, you need to you are legally you have to keep this kind of data more than 1, 2, even 3, up to 7 years. So you need a backup strategy to keep this data. Data responsibility also. So this also, many people think that if something happened on my data, on Microsoft side, then Microsoft will be in charge and will be responsible for any data loss on their server. And this is also wrong because there is a shared, what we call a shared responsibility. So Microsoft is responsible for the global service infrastructure, like data accessibility, data availability, security strategy, and so on. But the customer will remain the only responsible for the data integrity. In case of any data loss, the only responsible will be at the end the customer. Okay, so it's really important to note that in case of ransomware attacks or even deletion, any data loss, you won't be able to put the Microsoft responsibility to blame Microsoft for that. It will be your responsibility. So why is it necessary to back up M365? First of all, to prevent, as we said, any accidental deletion, like an employee who wants to, I don't know why, but for some reasons, there is an employee deleting some mailbox, for instance, then you have to, if you have a copy of this mailbox, then you can restore it easily and get access to this data. Mitigate internal and external threats, of course, as I previously said, in case of ransomware, for instance. Even if your OneDrive files get encrypted, then because you have a second copy of your data available, then you can restore it and get access to your data as usual. Compliance and legal requirements also for some vertical like banks or government or health. You have to provide some backup strategy, and you have to provide any kind of information for 1, 2, 3, or even 5 years. So you have to, it's mandatory to get a backup copy of your data. Exit planning again. So today Microsoft is the main player on the market with Teams, with Exchange. So many companies are using those kind of services. But maybe tomorrow there will be new players, and you would like to try another supplier. And then if you have an external copy of your data, then it will be much more easier to switch from your current supplier to another one. So it's still interesting to have a backup copy of all your data if one day you need an exit planning to go and try a new supplier. Continuity of activity, of course. Again, you can have some incident with the Microsoft services. Then if you don't want to wait for this kind of incident to be fixed, then you can have a continuity of activity by having another copy of your data. How to protect M365? Backup, and I'm not the only one to say that. Even Microsoft on his service agreement is saying that backup, you have to back up your data regularly, with third-party application. So even them, they have the same speech as me today. IDC Gartner, IT specialist, they are also saying that the backup of M365 is no longer an option. It's imperative for security and data control. So even IDC and Gartner are saying that the backup of M365 is mandatory today. So after that, how Atempo, what is the Atempo value proposal for M365 today? So first of all, I would like to speak about strengths of the solution. The current solution can support all the Microsoft application, and including SharePoint and Teams, which is not always the case for some competitors. Then we have a large flexibility on destination. We can either do backup on-prem or backup directly to the cloud. We support the disk, S3, or even tape storage if you want to do some air gap backup, for instance. You can do your backup on tape directly. Disruptive licensing and cost. If we compare the way we license the M365 module with our main competitors, then we decided to include the M365 module backup from TINA into a whole inclusive license. So today, if you already have a TINA license, then you can freely activate your M365 module. It will be included into your license, no extra cost. High performance, so we have developed the solution to be at the maximum capacity of the bandwidth available. We can backup, we can use the full bandwidth available to do the backup, and maybe Renaud will talk about this later in this presentation. Granular recovery, of course. You can choose to restore only one email from a mailbox, or the full mailbox, or several mailbox. So here again, it's flexibility. And also, we provide deduplicated data with the TINA ADE deduplicated engine. And you can gain up to 1/3 storage cost saving. And it's specifically for MSP, it's a really great advantage. If I go deeper into the solution, as I previously said, we can back up Teams, Exchange Online, OneNote, OneDrive, SharePoint Online, of course. But also, because I have many questions concerning Word, Excel, PowerPoint, which are the main software that we use every day. Of course, the solution is able to back up and will back up your Word, Excel data or files, because when you save your document, it goes to OneDrive or SharePoint Online, and because we are able to back up OneDrive and SharePoint, your documents, your everyday documents will be saved, will be in security, of course. If we take a look to each application, so for Teams, for instance, we can back up sites, channels, but also messages. If we have a look to SharePoint, we can back up files, folders, sites, and pages from SharePoint. OneNote, notebooks, sections, and pages also. And for OneDrive, we are able to back up the files and all the folders into the OneDrive. And of course, the solution keeps the permissions, the settings and permissions right after the restoration. If we have a look to how we can use the solution, so as I previously said, we provide flexibility into the backup destination. So once you have your TINA server, You can decide either to backup on-prem or backup to cloud. So on-prem, we support disk, tape, and S3 compatible buckets, or no, I mean S3 storages, sorry. And for cloud, we support all the main S3 generic public cloud like AWS, Wasabi, OVH. So again, flexibility. Restoration, granular restoration, so you can decide to only restore emails or files from OneDrive or SharePoint files, and you can restore on the same destination, so the same destination as the origin, sorry. Or you can define a new location, so you want to restore your file on a different location than the original one. It's also available. And lastly, you can also select your local file system restoration as destination. Okay, I've talked a lot, and now it's time for you to see how the solution looks like. And Renaud is going to demonstrate how easy it's to use the TINA solution.
Thank you, Geoffrey. So I take the hand over now.
You need a microphone, guys.
How an example of or use case of a user that have an accidental deletion of an email, and how we can restore that email easily. And I will end up with a last use case, which is basically a user having his files crypto-locked by a virus, and how we can easily restore that in other location out of place. So that's it basically. So let's start by the presentation. So TINA, as you can see, is a complete web UI. So I will start the presentation, sorry. Looks like it's not showing on screen, so I'm just waiting. So, okay, I'm taking, looks like it's now there. So TINA, as you can see, is a complete web UI screen, pretty modern, using latest technology. We start by authenticating ourselves on the web UI, as you can see. So I'm entering my admin credentials. I will be logging into the user admin screen. And from the dashboard, I will be able now to set up and configure a new agent. So for that, I will be clicking on agent, adding a new agent there. We see that we can now select a Microsoft 365 agent. And from there, I will be configuring the server, the destination server, adding an application name, and I will be able to show now how to configure the tenant in Microsoft 365. So for that, we have a simple process where we put a code, we authenticate ourselves, and from there, we are able to automatically create a tenant in Azure. So a very simple process, as you can see. Now that the tenant is created, we are able to move next and configure the next step of the application. So we see that we are able now to configure strategy, and we will define here, for example, that we want a full backup on a weekly basis and an incremental backup on a daily basis. So, and when this is done, we can move to configuring what element we want to back up out of Microsoft 365. So let's move to the next screen. Okay, so we can now select the screen, authenticate ourselves to display all the information. So adding a login, password, and connecting to the login screen. We are able to select SharePoint site and team site, and also a different user. So the solution enables us to also select a main folder, and with that backing up all the user, all the team site if you wish to. So I will be selecting all the files, and I can now move to the next step by finishing this configuration. Okay, looks successful. We can now launch a backup. Let's see how we perform that. So backup is launched. In a couple of minutes, we will now have a complete backup of everything. And from there, I will be able to start the first use case that I wanted to present, which was basically how a user by accidental deletion can restore their emails. How can we restore their emails easily? So let's move on to Office 365 as a user. In this use case, for example, I'm looking for an email received by a user named Patty Fernandez, as you can see. So Patty just shared with me the slides for today's webinar, and unfortunately, I did delete that email. So the idea is here losing that email, and maybe having that retention period going over, or having it myself deleting it from the bin. That can be another option. So the main idea is that we completely delete it, or we have no options to get back to that email. So now that this is done, the email is completely removed from Microsoft system, and we will be using Tina as an administrator to restore that email back to the system. So for that, I will be looking to Microsoft 365 restore options. I'm using Microsoft Exchange Online option. I will select my application and select the user that I want to restore to. Okay, so now that everything is selected, I can move next and authenticate myself, so that I'm able after that to restore the different options. Here we go. We can go next. And we have here two options, or I can do a full restore. So this can be a little bit the situation where in case of legal hold, I could be restoring complete user with all his emails. And but in our case, we just want to first delete to do a partial restore, and restoring only that email with that PowerPoint for our webinar today. So I will be selecting that email from that user. Okay, here we go. And now we can move next. And here we can now finish the restoration. And I want it to be restored in place because I want to find that email back in my mailbox. So let's go ahead with this configuration. And the job is now starting. So I will be able to follow the job from the job system. And here we go. Restoring is currently going. If I look to my emails right now, I can see that I will get my email back in a couple of seconds. Right now, I can see it. And thanks to this restore, I'm now able to do or perform the webinar that we were expecting today with the slide that was shared by Patty a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so the other scenario that I want to showcase is basically a situation where a user have a crypto locker on his files locally, and all the files are synchronized back to the server. So that means that basically every file in OneDrive is corrupted, and I need a situation where I can restore it back to another system. So this is where I will get back again to Microsoft 365. I could be restoring my files from OneDrive if it's personal or SharePoint. In this case, I want to restore personal files. I'm selecting the users that I want to restore to. I will authenticate back to the system so that I make sure I have the right authorization to restore. And now I can decide to restore, do a full restore, a partial restore. So let's say that I only want a couple of files that are part of interest, my main folder. And here we can also see the different backups. So I can go to a previous instance way before the crypto locker, let's say days before, weeks before. And selecting it, I can now select another place to restore on a different server. So I will select the folder destination of my restore system. And here we go. I just click on restore, and I should be able to have in a couple of minutes all my files restored in another place to avoid me paying another ransomware to hackers, for example. So I can open the files and getting back and work with it. So yeah, you see, it's two quick examples. The solution is way much flexible than the two examples I showed, because I could have imagined a lot of different use cases to present, but we have not enough time, of course. We could have done a different S3 destination backup, or we could have configured different TINA scenarios, maybe for MSP, for MSP SES, for integrators, for client wanting to host TINA locally. So different scenarios are possible. So, but of course, if you want to get more information, we are available. So I will just get back to Geoffrey so that we can move on with the presentation. But I'm done for the demo.
Thank you very much, Arnaud. It was very interesting. It's always nice to see how it looks like, how a solution looks like. Few words on the, if you want to get further information on Atempo solution for M365, then you can have a look on our website, atempo.com, into the resources section. You will see the dedicated data sheet, dedicated ebooks, and also tech papers we have done last month, and a new one is coming next month. But if you want to get further information, just atempo.com resources section. Solution in production, TINA is already available, and the M365 module is out there. So you again, if you want to read from our customers, you can go into the resources section from Atempo website, and you will see some testimonials with our main customer talking about the TINA solution and how we helped them in many situations. I think we are done with the presentation, and now it's time for your questions. So it's your turn to ask us for questions.
So I have seen quite a lot of questions in the chat. I started to answer a couple of them. I saw one that will be interesting for you, Geoffrey. So about the retention period with in accordance with GDPR, can you tell a little bit more how we can answer this?
So yes, yeah, of course, good question. So of course, because with the Atempo solution, you will be able to expand the retention time. You will be in compliance with GDPR, but also for some legal obligation or conformity obligation. Tina will help you to be in a how to say compliant. Thank you, Rano. Compliant with the current legal obligations.
Okay,
good question.
There was another question regarding the pricing included. What's the exact part of it? How?
Okay, so today in Atempo we decided to include the M365 solution backup into the current Tina license. Then if you already have a Tina license, then you can activate your M365 backup. But if you're looking for a new solution to back up your M365 environment, then it's also possible. We have dedicated pricing. You can contact us, and we'll give you the pricing, dedicated pricing only for M365. But yes, we are, I think, the only solution to include this M365 module, no matter of the mailbox number or user numbers. It's an all-inclusive pricing that we can provide with Tina.
Yeah, because there was another question about is Microsoft 365 module part of Tina?
Yeah.
And yeah, so the question is, of course, the answer is, of course, yes. So that means that you have all the functionalities that Tina already have. So you can back up Hyper-V, hypervisors from Hyper-V, OpenStack, Nutanix, and so on. You can back up applications, different kind of application or databases like MongoDB, SQL Server, and so on. So you get the full extension of it. There's a questions about what is the level of security set up by the solution. So globally, we have all the security requirements that are already there because of the robustness of Tina. So it's a solution existing since several decades right now, so 3 decades at least. So the solution is compatible Linux, so which is a strong OS regarding to hackers kind of situation. And of course, we do also respect best practices by vendors. So Microsoft 365 have a lot of practices when we are consuming Graph APIs, for example, and we respect them strictly. As an example, Microsoft 365 have 2 kind of API. So this Exchange Web Services, which is one API that we can use to back up Microsoft 365 Exchange, or Graph API. But Microsoft tells us also that AWS will be deprecated soon, but there's a lot of gaps or security gaps. And we see that in practice, a lot of vendors still use AWS, which is a big risk. And we didn't want to have any risks, so we are not using at all AWS in our solution. So we mainly use Graph API, and we use all the best practices to avoid any risk of security. We also use best practices for optimization, like batching, so that we can, in one instruction, do several email pulling and getting back. So there are different situations where we are very strict with security and performance. There was a question also about globally performance when backupping OneDrive, for example. For that question, globally depends also on the architecture that you set up, but basically what we could have seen with customers having implementing our solution. Usual use cases, we implement that on an on-premise location, and we back up Microsoft 365 as a SaaS solution. And then destination can be local storage or S3 local storage, or even S3 cloud storages. If we take an example of infrastructure where we have TINA with an S3 local storage and a good bandwidth optimized between those two, we have been able, for example, to have 40 gigabyte by hour in terms of performance, backing up, for example, a 150 terabyte of OneDrive. Another question that we have seen is questions about retentions or legal holds. Basically, the solution enables to extend the normal retention of Microsoft in a way that we are backing up the data, and we can retain that data as long as we wish, as long as your retention rules are defined. So basically, so it's more a user-defined action. So if you need to have a retention of 1 year, you can set it up. If you need to have a retention of 5, 10 years, you can imagine that by setting up a configuration where we are backing it up on the disk, and after 1 year we move it down to a tape situation. So those are possible actions. I'm reading more questions. There was a questions about, is there extra cost when we are backupping data from Microsoft 365? And there's no extra cost for Microsoft Azure because we are basically creating an enterprise application within Azure. So that means that we have no extra cost as this enables us to consume data using Graph APIs, and no extra cost for the customers or partner using the service. The only impact that there can be is that they can limit the bandwidth based on the number of interactions, but even for that we have options to decrease the number of Graph API calling options. So I saw also questions about do we need Office 365 to configure do we need Office 365 account to configure this TINA? So basically, mostly the thing is you have an admin account within Microsoft 365, and we will be using that admin account to connect to Azure AD, because Microsoft 365 is strongly linked to Azure AD. So basically, we create an enterprise application within Azure AD that enables us to basically connect with your admin, with one admin account or system account to give the access, and from there we are able to collect every information from Microsoft 365. I don't know if there are other questions. I'm looking if I didn't miss anyone. We can also answer the questions later. If there are other questions coming, we're more than happy to answer them. There's a question about our server are not connected to internet. How can Microsoft 365 agent work? So basically, what we have seen is we can also put our TINA into Azure, for example, and backing up your Microsoft 365 from a VM hosted in Azure. This gives you another guarantee, and then putting the storage on a local disk, or so this gives you at least a way to operate there.
Okay, thank you. I think it's time for us to leave. We'll leave the session open for 5 minutes. If you have some more questions, you can use the chat to ask your questions. If you need further details also, you can contact us directly by email. You have our emails on the screen. And thank you very much. Thank you, Renaud, for this demonstration. And see you soon on the next
Webinar.
next event, next webinar. Thank you, guys. Bye.